President's Trophy winners, that sure has a heck of a ring for Jets fans. The road ahead may just be beginning for the playoffs, but man, let's take in the moment and savor it.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Thanks for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Well, after a weekend where the Jets needed to do just one thing, win one game, and they were Central Division winners, as it turns out, they actually had a shot to also win the President's Trophy. I didn't think it would come up this quickly, but thanks to the Caps dropping 2 straight decisions to the Columbus Blue Jackets, suddenly everything was on the table. And with that, the Jets beat the Chicago Blackhawks on Saturday. Was a little bit of a hairy affair, but thankfully the Jets got it done in a shootout, despite maybe not having the most disciplined game. I mean, I think we can all forgive them for a little bit, all the pressure of the Dallas game and everything. They aced that assignment, so maybe they weren't as focused on Saturday, but that's totally cool. All they needed were just a couple of points to see it through, and they got them. So here we are. Not only did they win the West on Saturday, but now after, dropping a decision against the Oilers, you'd think, well, how exactly does that get them the President's Trophy? But thanks to the Caps also dropping points, that second game, like I said, against the Blue Jackets that they also lost, the Jets are first overall. And that is truly, wow. I don't quite know how to put it into words because I don't know that I ever thought we'd really be talking about the Jets again as President's Trophy winners. They've been contenders in previous years where they had some really good runs. And then, from January onwards, post All-Star break, really, things would always fall apart. We'd never be in a position where the Jets were first overall for months on end. But here we are. The Jets really didn't spend much time outside of the top 3 of the league. In fact, I don't even know if they did for more than just a couple of games. If there was a point this season that they were out, I'm pretty sure that they were always within range throughout the entire season, which is truly not only an incredibly difficult accomplishment to pull off, but just something insane for this Jets team to actually do. And for the Jets to not only come all this way, see it through, and get to, the promised land of a huge banner. I mean, what else could you possibly ask for from this regular season? The Jets are having so many career years for players, and now they have 2 banners that they can hang in their rafters. Will they use 1 or 2? I don't know. By virtue of being the President's Trophy winner, you are also, your conference and divisional winner. So really, you'd only need 1 banner. But I kind of wonder if the Jets maybe do a cheeky little 2 banner. We'll see. But either way, man, how can you not be thrilled for this? This is a moment that I think all of us not necessarily dreamed of, but I mean, did anyone really come into the season thinking the Jets were going to win a President's Trophy? I know I sure as heck didn't. I thought, this would actually be a year where Winnipeg might be having to do some growth, right? I thought that they would lean a little more on youth, maybe rely on the kids a bit more, and perhaps even flirt with missing the playoffs. Not because the team would be bad or anything, but because, you would maybe take a bit of a step back. You had a huge year last year, but the previous season, obviously, things late kind of fell off the rails a little bit. And how would it be under Arniel in his first season? But the Jets kind of doubled down on their veterans and the guys that they felt they could commit to and pulled through to deliver one of the best seasons, well, in my mind, the best season, the best regular season in Jets history, which, considering we've had some really amazing ones in the past, really is saying something. But, the small market team that everyone says can't attract star talent, can't sign big free agents, can't convince guys to waive their no trade clauses, the Jets basically just gave everyone the finger and said, we'll do it ourselves. We can do it ourselves. We're good enough to be first overall, and they have done it and proven it. So, wow, how awesome is this? They have come all this way, and to not even need all 82 games is pretty darn amazing. That 15-1 start that they had at the start of the season really did set this team up for such a big second half, right? The Jets weren't perfect. The past couple of weeks they've dropped more games than usual. Injuries have frankly started to pick up. Things have been a little topsy turvy. But Winnipeg, in those crucial big get up for the moment games, they delivered and came through. And they did it again over the weekend against the Hawks, where sure, they didn't perhaps need to dominate or be at that level that they were against Dallas or some of the other teams, but they still found a way to take care of business even though they fell behind early. So, you know, it just seems to be a testament to what the season has been, where Winnipeg, really doesn't seem to slow down or stop fighting. Obviously, tonight's game against the Oilers, yeah, who really cares, right? The Jets did lose 4-1, but they were icing half of their normal lineup. I wasn't really too upset about it. I don't think anyone cares. The Jets were putting together a pretty kind of, scrappy blue line unit. The forward group, for the most part, was mostly there, but no Lowry's obviously a big difference. No Ehlers. So I just don't think we were really that worried about it. But there was a chance that if the Jets needed to win this game for a President's Trophy clinching scenario, they could have. But the Caps also dropped the ball. So hey, here we are, first overall, clinched. Now instead of a Z next to your username, you can put a P, and that just feels really darn special. This season has been such a blessing to go through and watch and share with all of you. And, I really feel like this year's playoffs, and like, I know it could go any number of ways. I am 100% getting ready to let myself be heard again. That's kind of where I'm at with this year. I feel like we are in line for a really fun postseason. I think we're all going to be emotionally invested beyond what is healthy for all of us. But I'm looking forward to it. The President's Trophy is already such a really cool accomplishment. It'd just be amazing if the Jets can add one or two other pieces of hardware. 30% ish of first overall ranked teams in the past 40 years have gone on to win a cup. So, that's pretty decent. Maybe a little bit less than 30%. My math is actually not that great. But yeah, 8 out of 37, right? Sorry. 8 out of 37. That's closer to like 25-ish percent. That's still pretty darn good. I would take that in a heartbeat. Those are fantastic odds. I wouldn't really think twice about it. Everyone always says President's Trophy curse this and all that crap. I don't believe in that superstition. Good teams are usually the ones who win the cup. And if you see all the early eliminations, maybe it's because the NHL playoff structure is actually the problem. Being first in the league is not a problem. That's a testament to how good you are as a team, and I think the Jets should absolutely celebrate. But it is fun to note that all the players that have been interviewed, I think DeBello and somebody else was asked about it, they all said it's a great achievement, but we aren't really focused on that trophy. What we want is a cup, and that is the hunger that this team needs heading into the playoffs. So Winnipeg, celebrate. It's awesome. We still have one more game later this week, and then there are still some, frankly, crazy playoff races ongoing. We'll chat about that in just a little bit. But before we do, did want to let you know about our friends and partners at Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web dev, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you were, for instance, looking for some marketing, graphics design, Upwork can help find you a great freelance expert who's going to give you some fantastic work, and posting a job request is free and simple. Within a day, you'll usually have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. And instead of hiring full time, Upwork helps you find affordable top tier freelancers to scale your business the way you need to, so you're not fully committed and you can make sure that you get the most bang for your buck without, going a little bit too crazy, right? We all understand that some smaller businesses need to start, part time and by contract sort of work so that it's part and parcel for what you need. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are just chatting a little bit about the week ahead. Obviously, for Winnipeg, it's all downhill from here. Just one more game against the Ducks. And at this point, Winnipeg's not really going to be trying. This is going to be a tune-up for the playoffs, right? So a lot of the starters tonight did rest in this game. Obviously, we had Connor and Shifley still in and a couple of other guys, but, Hellebuck took the night off. Morrissey took the night off. And we had a handful of the other really critical players take a bit of a breather. So Wednesday, I expect guys like Lowry to come back, Morrissey probably coming back. Sandberg will be interesting. Obviously, we all had probably a bit of a cliff's edge moment where we were all wondering if we were going to jump because Sandberg blocked a shot and then went down on an Oilers power play. And obviously Edmonton scored, but we were all staring at Sandberg writhing around on the ice, not really moving a lot, and noticed that his leg was twitching. And so there was a lot of fear, right? And I was like, I wanted to really be excited about a President's Trophy win, but it was very hard to when your second most important defender right behind Morrissey is writhing around, just about 7 days before the playoffs starts. So thankfully, Arneal said he's going to get checked out tomorrow, but he thinks it's nothing too serious. It was on the inside of his leg rather than his ankle, so that is huge news. Seems like it's not going to be too bad, but I would, kind of expect that if it's, even if there's even a little bit of a doubt, I would hope that they just sort of rest him for Wednesday. You've got some other guys who can come in, fill in the void, and play some minutes, and, I just don't think this is a scenario where you necessarily need to risk him. Let him get rested. The playoffs are really the most important thing. Let him heal up, give him the week off, and then he'll probably be fine. I don't think he's really going to be too rusty when he comes back. When he came back earlier this year, the rust was pretty minimal, so I'm not super stressed about that. I think for everyone else, they'll probably want to get some NHL reps back up to speed. Pionk we'll have to see how that works. Neal obviously doesn't really do usually that well away from Sandberg, but again, this is a game against the Ducks that's really for nothing, so I don't think the Jets are really going to worry too much about it. Would just be good to make sure that everyone mostly gets through, stays healthy, and that's probably the biggest thing. Now, I am curious to know if the Jets maybe call up a couple of rookies for perhaps an NHL debut. Salamonson would, of course, be one of my big picks. He has been one of the truly standout young players in the AHL this year. He's clearly been one of the biggest, performers on the Moose. And yes, he is still a little bit raw. You will still see him have some impetuous moments in defense, but overall, he's really adapted quickly to North American ice. I feel like he's found a lot of offensive success much faster than I expected him to. So very good early signs from him. Probably be another year in the AHL unless something changes this offseason. But after that, wouldn't be shocked if he starts getting looks with the Jets. As far as some of the other guys are concerned, obviously Lambert had, another injury scare. We haven't really heard too much about Brad. I don't know what his situation is. If he is healthy enough to maybe come up for a game on Wednesday, maybe they do that. I don't know. I don't know how many spots are going to be available for Jets rookies, but I am kind of hopeful. Connor and Shifley could maybe take a game off. They played both this weekend, so they were some of the starters who didn't rest, and maybe Arneal wants to give a couple of other guys a few extra, NHL wages from the AHL ranks. So maybe that could be a thing. Obviously, Manitoba season's over, so it's not like they've really got much going. But Otherwise, I think the biggest thing is just get through Wednesday, stay healthy, and prepare for the weekend. As far as when the playoffs are supposed to start for the Jets, there continues to be a little bit of debate, and it's going to depend on who actually becomes Winnipeg's first round opponent. We're going to talk about this a little bit later because it's actually still up in the air. But assuming that it's either St. Louis or Minnesota, we would probably see a Saturday game. So the concert that's going to be at CLC will get moved. And then if it's Calgary, that would be a Sunday game. So interesting timing, at least. The Calgary one is just because their season's going to end a little bit later in the week than everyone else's. So for the Jets, that does mean a little bit of extra time off. Will that be a problem? Probably not. Usually, you don't want to let the team get too rested. You'd like to have a few reps in between, but I mean, for the Jets, I just don't worry about it, right? Winnipeg, regardless of who they face in the first round, will probably be fine. So, not too stressed about that at all. But either way, this coming week is going to be a very interesting one. The Jets are going to try and maybe have some good scrimmages and practices. I guess I sort of wonder if Arneal maybe makes any changes to the lineup, right? He did make an Ehlers Lowry swap recently in Saturday's game. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. Obviously, Nick again also got a bit of an injury in that Saturday game. If you didn't see it, a reffing decision where the linesman should have jumped out of the way. I don't know what he was doing. He had a huge brain fart and just sat there and should have moved out of the way. Nick backed into the blue line and ended up tripping and kind of catching the back of his leg and going down. Don't think it's serious, but Arneal said it was an aggravation of a previous injury. So not a big fan of that, but hopefully, it doesn't sideline him too much. Arneal said he didn't think he was too worried about it. So I'm just going to assume that, both he and Sandberg will be in on the coming weekend games. So, a lot of guys are a little bit banged up. I feel like this is a good opportunity for some rotation. We have a couple of players that we just really can't afford to live without, and maybe giving them Wednesday off wouldn't be the most undue thing. But otherwise, Wednesday should be a great celebration. It's going to be Fan Fest, Fan Appreciation Day. I do wonder if there's going to be some sort of maybe a ceremony or something for the President's Trophy win. Not like a full banner raising or anything, but a little bit of a celebration and an acknowledgement of what an incredible accomplishment it is. Otherwise, I guess a lot of this week is just going to be waiting for us. Probably some watching of the scoreboards here. Not a lot necessarily, but maybe have a bit of a rooting interest or something on the other side of the brackets. Maybe you're looking at the Eastern Conference race, which actually still isn't over. Montreal is really clinging on to a playoff spot by just 3 points, but the Blue Jackets continue to make it interesting. So we could see Columbus still squeak in. I mean, there's for having 2 games left, a lot to play for both teams. Will be fascinating. Obviously, I don't really have a rooting interest there, but I think it would be nice if Columbus made it. I think all of us, would like to see them a little bit more than Montreal, not because of the Canadian rivalry, but because given Columbus's circumstances this year, I think that team really would be a truly incredible story if they actually make the playoffs. It's been an obviously very difficult past few months with Goudreau's passing, but they've really united behind the tragedy. I feel like that locker room's very tight, and they have frankly kept themselves alive in the playoff race despite having a really rough past couple of weeks. So very interesting for scoreboard watching and kind of rooting for the Blue Jackets. In the West, there's not a lot for us to really focus on, but I do want to talk about the wild card race in just a little bit because it will be, down to the wire to determine who actually plays the Jets in the first round. Based on the weekend's results, we still don't really have that much clarity. All I can tell you is that no one wants to play the Jets, and somebody is going to get stuck with us. So we will try and figure out which team is more likely to do so and who we would still prefer. But before we dive into that, did want to talk about our friends and partners at Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. And they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller for longer. I'm always the person who likes the shelled variety. I think that's just a more fun way to do it, a little more tactile, but maybe you're on the go, you're dropping off the kids at school, or you need to pick me up at work. They've got a no shelled variety, so it's just a little easy tear and grab and eat, and you are good to go. And of course, Wonderful Pistachios has some great seasonings and flavors to choose from, and it always comes packed with a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. They're always great flavored, and they are super convenient for on the go snacking. So get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Hey, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Every day, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode, as we are just wrapping up really quickly with some thoughts on who we're kind of keeping an eye on heading into the postseason. Obviously, for the Jets, it is now just time to, like I said at the start of the weekend, to kick your feet up and relax. I know some of you were maybe a little bit more nervous, and some of you who were skeptical, you were actually a little bit right. It was not an easy weekend for the Jets, but Winnipeg still got all that they needed to, and then some, thanks to some of the scoreboard results elsewhere. So, yay, awesome. We love that. But for the Jets, the biggest question is who the heck we're playing in the first round. That wild card race in the West continues to really come down to the wire, and Calgary has suddenly made things very interesting. They just beat up on the Sharks a couple minutes ago, and, their form and record has been a little bit okay-ish the past couple of games. They're getting points in most of their last 10, and because the Blues and Wild seemingly cannot just finish out their last couple of games smoothly, they have now opened a door for Calgary to sneak in here. Now, Minnesota's at 95 points. They are, barring a last game loss, likely to lock up, one of these wild card spots. The Blues are at 94, so that's a little bit less comfortable for them. They really need to win their final game and make it 96 points. If that is the case, and say Minnesota loses, what would be very funny, and perhaps very possible, is if the Calgary Flames make good on their final 3 games to bump one of these teams out, probably Minnesota. If the Flames do make that the case, they could potentially win out and finish at 96 as well, which would tie them with the Blues. I think the Blues would technically own the tiebreaker here, so they would own wild card 1. Minnesota would be out, but again, that assumes a couple of different things. If we're looking at who we would rather play in wild card 2, I would certainly prefer Calgary. The Flames obviously have some really strong goaltending, but overall, I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Wolf can only save so much, and I think the Jets' offense is potent enough to where, it wouldn't be that crazy of a series. I think the Jets could probably get through it reasonably quickly, and, I wouldn't stress about it too much. The Wild and Blues do have some interesting goaltending situations. I like Gustafsson the most out of all these guys. I think he's very good. Binnington usually has some volatility, but we also know that he's had some big games, I guess. Wolf is probably the best of the 3 right now and has some real Calder, I would say, juice. But again, right, I think for the most part, how you want to look at this is who would you rather Vegas play? And if I'm looking at the Knights, I think I lean towards wanting it to be the Blues. I think Minnesota for the Jets would be a fair enough, first round. I think the Blues top 6 would give the Knights real fits. The Blues haven't played particularly well in their last couple of games, but I do feel like they have a top 6 that would match up quite favorably against what Vegas is out there with. The only problem for St. Louis is that their defense is really poor, and it's why, in the game against the Jets, they got eviscerated, right? Winnipeg really dominated all of their puck-moving back-end guys. In fact, they just don't really have a lot of puck-moving ability on the blue line, so the top 6 really had to try and carry the load and just really couldn't do it. So not too worried about that series. Minnesota, I think, is probably the team that's going to generate more scoring opportunities and stuff. I feel like they do tend to pepper the net a lot, but again, I think the Jets could pretty fairly dispatch them as well. Really, again, Winnipeg just has to figure out who they want Vegas to play, but we probably won't know that until later this week. Unless Calgary drops one of its first couple of games, I feel like that clarity won't be until probably Wednesday or Thursday. So it might be a little bit of a later start for the Jets playoffs if Calgary squeaks in, but we'll just have to wait and see. In terms of some of the other playoff hopes that we have, obviously, if we're looking at Dallas and Colorado, we'd probably prefer to face Dallas. I would expect that, the Avs are going to be the ones to beat in that part of the bracket, but we'll see. On the Pacific side, LA will have a really good shot at beating the Oilers. I do think that the Kings are going to be the one to come out of that series. I just have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be different than the previous seasons. And then Vegas, if they get knocked out early, that would be a huge blessing for the Jets. But whoever does knock them out may have been a better team in that series. So not all good news for the Jets. But Winnipeg, right, they've proven time and again this season that they are, the number one ranked team for a reason. They have really risen to incredible heights. 55 friggin' wins on the year, man, and a chance to add win number 56 on Wednesday just for the heck of it. Just for the heck of it, right? We're not really afraid of anyone. The Jets are feeling pretty darn good. They've got the Vezina winner, the Jennings winner, and potentially the Hart winner as well. Things are all in order. Now it's just waiting for our first round opponent, and then the fun can really begin. Let me know your expectations for the playoffs below, either in the comments or at my social medias at HLLivingLoco and at @LO_Winnipeg Jets. Where will you be watching Game 1 next weekend? Are you hoping to be at the game? Have you already got your tickets? Let me know in the comments, or, if you've got a cool watch party, drop that as well. Let your friends know, invite your friends. It's going to be a great time. This week is really, going to be such a celebration for Jets fans. I think we're all going to be riding pretty high, especially as we get some good injury news, hopefully, some guys coming back and into practice. All of that, I think, would be just really the icing on the cake for what has been such a cool last month and a half of Jets hockey. But now it is time for the playoffs to finally arrive. We are just a couple games away from it. I'm excited. I hope you are too. We will be here all throughout the playoffs to cover all the Jets action as long as they are in it and beyond. But for tonight's episode, that's going to be all the time that we have. I thank you so much for listening and making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day, every day. We'll see you back here tomorrow with more Jets coverage, so see you then. Have a great night, and as always, go Jets go.